Okay, good evening, everyone. Can you all hear me okay? And apologies that I'm going to spend most of this evening with my back to at least sort of half the room. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us, and welcome to the Radyr Morganstown Hustings. My name is Tom Evans. I'm the chair of the Radyr Morganstown Association, who've organised tonight's event, and I'll be trying my best to moderate and keep you all under control as we go along. So, as I'm sure we're all aware, the local council elections will be held next Thursday, the 5th of May, and this year there will be 2 representatives for the Radyr Morganstown Ward instead of the one in previous elections. And the aim of tonight's meeting is to give voters the chance to hear from you all firsthand, and particularly on topics of real sort of local importance, as the questions have been submitted by residents themselves. I'll shortly invite you all to introduce yourselves briefly, but before I do, just for the benefit of the audience, I'll just quickly run through the format we'll be following this evening. So everyone on the published statement of persons nominated for the R&M ward was invited this evening, and this is a non-selective hustings event as a result. The Liberal Democrat Party, who have 2 candidates, have not taken up our invitation. The Propelled Party candidate, Steve West, was due to be with us this evening, but unfortunately has had to withdraw at short notice due to illness. As I mentioned briefly, we invited residents through a number of different channels to submit their questions to us to try and make sure we captured as broad a spectrum of inputs as possible. And from those submissions, we've created a short list of 6 that we feel cover a wide and diverse range of topics. These questions have been shared with the candidates in advance of this evening, and I will invite each party in turn to respond, and they will have a 2-minute time slot to do so. We will rotate the order as we go through the questions to try and ensure things run as fairly as possible. And then at the end of the 6 questions, there will be a 3-minute slot per candidate to allow a statement to voters, including any responses to points made during the evening that they may wish to pick up on. So with that taken care of, please, can I ask the candidates to introduce themselves, and I will start with the candidates from Plaid Cymru and the Green Party.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? My name is Radyr Roberts, and I'm a scientist and a mother before ever thinking of being a politician. So I feel like a fish out of water tonight. But the reason I'm standing is because the local LDP has been implemented in a terrible way in my area. I've got some building on the green field in front of our house, and more building on the green field behind our house, and 300 houses built on a green field to the left of our house. So I have felt I had to do something, and that's why I'm running. I'm an unusual candidate in that I never wanted to be a politician.
Thank you, Rod. Hi, evening all. My name is Michael Deem. I've lived in Radyr Morganstown most of my life. Grew up in Morganstown, Glenys Terrace North. Moved over to Radyr, then to 2 Minutes Close. Sat on the community council here before. Done lots of casework within the village, so I've got to know quite a lot of you over the years. Stood for election last time round, 2017, came very close. So hopefully with the support of the Green Party running alongside us this time, we'll get go one step further.
Hi there, my name is Callum Davis. I'm one of your Conservative candidates in this election. I'm originally from Mid Wales. I moved to Cardiff 4.5 years ago, and I love this city, and it's a city I want to make my home in for the rest of my life. I previously worked in a trade association defending property rights. I now work as a communications officer, and by the end of this campaign, I estimate I would have done nearly 200 hours of door knocking and not just leafleting. Thank you so much.
Hello, thank you very much for the invitation to attend tonight. My name is Chris Harris. I'm from Pembrokeshire originally. I came to Cardiff nearly 15 years ago to study history and politics. I foolishly then tried to get a job working in politics, which I decided wasn't for me. I now work in financial services. I work in the compliance department for a pretty large company. And I'm running for council because I've looked at some of the things happening at council level, and it saddens me to see the state of the city at the moment.
Hello, good evening. My name is Tyrone Davis. I'm 58 years old and I'm a retired head teacher. I was born around 13 miles away in Pentra in the Rhondda Valley and have lived through, for all my life, I've lived in South Wales, with the exception of 3 years where I trained, I studied for a degree in history and politics. I presently live on Fisher Hill Way in Radyr, where I've lived since 2004.
Good evening, Noswaith Da. I'm Helen Lloyd Jones, and I thought you might like to know why I joined the Labour Party in 1996. One was my belief that every child, regardless of their background, should receive a good education. I also believed that the National Health Service was essential to us all, and it needed our support, and it still does. I also believed in devolution. I felt that Westminster didn't care about Wales. I still feel Westminster doesn't care about Wales. We are currently being allocated significantly less money by Westminster than we would have had from the European Union based on analysis of needs in different areas of Europe. And I still care. And when I see the church in Penrhys giving children jam sandwiches so that we at least have something inside them to see them through the night, I know we still have work to do.
Thank you all. I know I'm going to come across as a stickler, but if we could all try to keep to the time limit, we've got a number of questions to go through, and remember, we will have that 3-minute individual slot at the end, so there will be that final chance to get your point across as well. But thank you very much for the introductions. So I will move on to our first question this evening, which is around the revised local development plan. So we note that all candidates express their concern over the possible extension of Plasdur and the replacement Cardiff LDP. What practical actions can the candidates commit to undertake, if elected, to support the community in their activities in relation to this threat, and also to avoid any further delay to the facilities and services associated with Plasdur, which should be delivered under the planning permission already granted within the current LDP? And for this first question, I would like to ask the Conservative Party to respond first, please.
Hi there. Well, thanks for letting me answer this question, because it's clearly the most important issue to residents in Radyr Morganstown. That's clearly what I found when I've been campaigning on the doorstep. Green spaces have been eliminated in this area at a rate it's unprecedented, we feel. And when it comes to the fact that Cardiff has declared a nature emergency, it seems like a total contradiction in terms of policy making. And we want to make sure, to answer the question, that developers' feet are held to the fire and promises are delivered on. In lots of places in Radyr Morganstown, you will see developments and it's only the houses there. Well, where are the shops, the GP surgeries, the proper infrastructure when it comes to lights and the parks, where are they? And we want to make sure they are properly delivered on. We've actually taken some action already, me and Chris here. We went around Radyr Morganstown in the cold and the rain back in February, collecting signatures against building on the land to the north and the west of the golf club, as well as on the station car park. It is totally nonsensical to build on the rail station car park, given how long it took to build and how long it's only been there, and given that it's supposed to alleviate congestion into the city centre. So we want to work like that. We start as we mean to go on. We want to organise and mobilise. I'm very glad to see citizens in this area have already started to do that through the LDP group, and being involved with those kind of groups is something I'm very keen to do. We have to also make sure that we speak with one unified voice with a disciplined, multi-pronged strategy that makes the arguments that the council has to hear, as well as the people on the planning committee. And also, just before I finish, because my time's coming up, it's called the LDP, but I think that stands for the Labour Development Plan, because let's not forget that that party is the party that voted for the development that allowed Plasdur to happen, and we have to make sure that doesn't happen again. And I know the candidates might be very passionate about this, but I'm sure the Labour Chief Whip is as well. Thank you.
If I could ask the Labour Party to respond next, please.
Tyrone and I were at the first meeting of the Radyr Morganstown Local Development Group, which I chaired and with the help of Louise Barnes convened. We are immensely proud of the work that the group, under the guidance of Angela Gray as their chair, has done already. They have produced a considered, balanced report focusing on the predicted changing population figures for Cardiff, which should kick the proposals into the long grass for some time. What is needed is a measured and professional approach. Much as many of us would like to wave placards and have demonstrations, the replacement LDP is a planning issue and has to be challenged on planning grounds. Redrow and the Plymouth estate identified the land called Goetre Vawr as a strategic reserved site. TFW identified the car park. These are not sites identified by Cardiff Council. It should be possible to get the site identified by a TFW removed from the replacement LDP. Asking Redrow and the Plymouth estate to remove Goetre Vawr site is considerably more challenging. These are not poor organisations, as you appreciate. Realistically, we may find ourselves continuously having to keep an eye on planning applications with respect to Goetre Vawr and objecting to them for many years. There is a ray of hope because the Labour Manifesto for Cardiff talks about ensuring a green belt around the city. It also flags up a need to protect local spaces for nature with stricter planning guidance, and best of all, a desire to see Cardiff as a national park city, and the Goetre Vawr site ticks all the boxes for those aims.
Thank you. And Plaid Cymru Green Party Common Ground Alliance, please.
Thank you, Tom. I'm going to try and stick to my time on this. I could talk about the LDP all night. It's a subject that I feel passionately about. I don't actually agree with Helen. I think that there are other avenues that we can use other than simply objecting to individual applications. The replacement local development plan is currently going through consultation process, and that needs to come to full council and be voted on by the next administration before that can be put into practice. We have committed as Plaid Cymru Common Ground candidates to vote against the replacement local development plan in its current form. The three options that have been proposed, option A is on a 0.8% growth per annum with an additional 2,000 homes on top of what's already been signed off. Option B, 1% growth, an additional 7,640 homes. Option C, which is what I think the Labour administration are pushing for, is a 1.3% growth and an extra 14,790 new houses on top of those that have already been signed off in the previous local development plan. This goes completely against Welsh Government projections. Welsh Government projections, their latest projections say that we're only going to grow 0.6% per annum. Each year, so we don't need these extra houses being put into the replacement plan, but it seems that the administration in City Hall are, it's their passion to build on every single piece of greenfields surrounded our villages, and I simply cannot trust the current administration to protect these spaces. So we will vote against the plans. If Labour don't get a majority in this election, we as opposition councillors can actually stop this from going through. So I urge you, there is another option.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Our next question is on the topic of active travel and green transport. So green transport and active travel options should be a part of the future for Radyr and Morganstown. Bus services are of a particular concern to residents, especially as there is now only one bus per hour with an early evening finish, and this service is often unreliable. Congestion on Heel Isaf and Llantrysant Road are also of current concern, and with increased population, this is only anticipated to get worse. If elected, what will candidates do to ensure that green and/or active travel is a reliable option for all local residents? And this time I'd invite Labour to start, please.
Okay, thank you. First of all, regarding the buses, we obviously, as candidates, if elected, we would make sure that we fight for route number 63 and make sure that it doesn't get lost. And in fact, it may be enhanced. Also as well, when we've been canvassing, a number of people are saying that they're not sure if the bus is coming. So we will advocate the erection of the live information boards, as many as we can, around Radyr and Morganstown, so people are aware what time the bus is coming, if at all. Also as well, we'd like to see an amendment to Route 62. Route 62 currently goes from Cardiff City Council to Radyr. We see no reason why it couldn't also do a loop around our community. We would also argue that we need to align the bus service to Radyr Comprehensive so that start and finish times get buses and children can safely transport to school, and that might leave less or fewer cars on the streets from parents. And also as well, smaller shuttle buses, electronic ones that can be dialed up. They're being used in Scandinavia and more rural communities, linking up strategic sites within a village or a community, like for example, the station, the clinic, and so on. Regarding the metro, we support the metro. It's going to bring great benefits, but we do think there needs to be an integration between the bus and the train services. So common timetables, common tickets, and also for those of us, well, I'm not quite 60, but when the bus pass is available for me, I'm hoping it's going to be available for the metro too. Besides that, we would like to see Transport for Wales recognising that Taftswell and Treforest need to be in the same banding as ours, so that anyone from the valley who wants to go to Cardiff may well park on the larger car parks there and not come to us. And we, as well as the other parties, will be advocating no loss of land, the station car park, which obviously is so important to prevent cars from travelling to the city. I've got a few more points, but I'll end there because I've elapsed my time.
Appreciate that, thank you. Plaid Cymru in the Green Party Alliance, please.
Thank you. Yes, so there's a lot, actually. I agree with Tyrone on there. I think the only thing that we differ on is the compound in Morganstown. We didn't believe in the location for the industrial compound on Glynnis Farm. We were against it at the time, and we think there is a much better brownfield site with access further up the line that could have been used. But just keeping the message local, we have, when I grew up in the village, we used to have 3 bus services an hour. My next neighbour Flo, she used to tell me there was a time when we had 4 buses, which would have been brilliant, but I don't actually remember that time. The fact that we're now down to a single bus an hour is shocking, especially when you consider the improvements to the public transport links to our villages were promised as part of the LDP that was delivered in 2016. I've written to Cara Wilde about this issue. I've written to Conservative councillors in the northwest of Cardiff, and the response I get every time on why we can't make these improvements to our bus service is because legislative changes are needs to be made for Welsh Government in order for us to be able to deliver the public transport network that we want, which is fair enough, but the people that I've spoken to up until now sort of stop the argument there. They don't then push their colleagues who are actually in Welsh Government for these changes. So I've been working with the local Senedd member, Rhys Appo, who covers South Wales Central, who's made a number of proposals for changes to legislation, including repealing the Transport Act 1985, and also some laws that we can pass at a Senedd level in relation to transport and planning to be able to give Cardiff Bus the tools that they need to put on a service that can actually compete with private companies in this city and get the bus services to the villages that we deserve.
And the Conservative Party, please.
Active travel and green transport. This is an issue that is very important to me. I do not drive. I am dependent upon either Shanks's pony, my feet, the train, or on my bike, which I've had far too many run-ins with certain vehicles as of late. So going on to travel itself, it's admirable to be trying to push people to use the trains. The train service to Radyr is very, very good. It's very frequent. It's going to increase with the line being electrified. So in terms of train, I think that Radyr itself does quite well. But I think Morganstown itself, as they're building the bridge over in Morganstown, I think they should consider whether to build a halt there so that people can alight in Morganstown. In terms of buses, I believe that the current bus services should be restored so that the 62 and the 63 return to the period where you have 3 services an hour. I am conscious that bus services have been of late largely put down to the pandemic, the use of the service. It's not worthwhile to have because people are not using the service. So I do believe that they should restore what was in place so that there is an active means of people using the bus if the train is not suitable for them. The other thing I would like to say about the cycling, I cycle a lot. I'm out on my bike every day. My build may not portray that, but it is what it is. The main thing I would say, if people are cycling into the city centre, the Taft Trail is a brilliant route to use. I advise anyone to use it. It's much safer than being on the road. However, lighting late at night, it's not very safe, especially even if you've got lights on your bike. It's not a safe route to use on all occasions. And also when you do get to the city centre, when we talk about travel, it's not just in Radyr, it's when you get to your destination. They need to make sure that when you get to the city centre, that bikes can be securely locked up so that they're not being stolen, so people can use them with confidence. Thank you very much for that.
Okay, on to our third question. Very topical one. So climate change and the cost of the energy crisis. So the cost of energy to heat and power our homes is skyrocketing currently. It's pushing many more people into hardship. What would candidates do to address fuel poverty and make homes in Cardiff, especially given the amount of development currently going on, more energy efficient? Sorry, Hannah, I'll ask the Plaid Cymru Green Party Alliance to kick us off on this one.
Hello, hi. My husband and I have done a lot of thinking and writing about the Welsh economy. And one of the things we've tackled is fuel poverty and how it affects many low-income families in Wales. And I can't ignore the fact that we're in a very different time to when the LDP was decided upon. There are threats everywhere to people's livelihoods, and there's a massive cost of living crisis. People have told me that their energy bill has tripled in the last couple of months, and that's unsustainable, and we need to help people cope with this. I think one of the things we highlighted in our report was working on the energy efficiency of people's homes, and also using renewable sources like solar and tidal. And I think that with the implementation of the LDP, Labour has missed a really big possibility, which was insisting on the installation of solar panels on all these new houses. Imagine how much that would have helped people right now in coping with the electricity bills and the cost of living crisis. And not just new houses, but council houses. Imagine how much their bills would be cut just by installing a home battery and solar power. I think that the previous Labour council has really missed the boat in terms of trying to exploit these renewable sources of energy that we should all have access to, because it would help us be less dependent on fossil fuels, which at the moment, as we know, is something we really want to stop being dependent on with the war in Ukraine. So they've dropped the boat and they haven't future-proofed our energy sources or us against the cost of living crisis. And I could go on and on. If you want to see the report, email me after this and I'll send you a copy.
And the Conservative Party next, please.
Hi there. Hi there. So it's important to remember that a lot of the increased cost of living now is coming from global pressures. There's a sustained demand, increase in global demand for energy. There is the war in Ukraine. And then there is also the aftermath of spending during the pandemic, which I'm sure we all supported measures like furlough, which I think was important at the time. Sadly, now we have to deal with the consequences. And I'm not untouched by this. My energy bills have also gone up. And every pound I've spent on that is a pound I can't save for the future to buy a house, for instance. I'm happy there to see that the British government has given money to households, I think council band A to D, and it's good that the Welsh government has passed that on. It's also increased the threshold by which you pay national insurance by £3,000, cut fuel duty, it's increased the national living wage, and it's reduced the take on universal credit, I believe. So we just have to be mindful that extra money being ploughed in is what drives inflation. We need to let people keep more of their own money, and which is what's quite worrying that council tax in Cardiff has gone up by nearly 50% over 10 years. Those above inflation increases is something that has hit people very hard in the pocket. And letting people keep more of their own money is what's going to allow them to weather this crisis, as well as targeted government support, especially to when it comes to fuel duty, making sure the money reaches the people who need it most is what's the duty. It's the duty of policymakers to ensure that they get what they need. When it comes to energy efficiency, I agree with a lot of what you were just saying there when it comes to how houses are built. And I think there are some regulations in place that enforces energy efficiency, I think on social homes, new social homes, but also we should be making sure that developers, when they do build in this area, or across Cardiff anyway, make sure that their houses are built to a sufficient energy efficient standard, and they're all minimum energy efficiency standard. That's right. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, the Labour Party, please.
It's an enormous problem, and we all know that things are really appalling with the Ukraine and Russia, and we would all wish that things were very different. But what we can do is what we have to look at the moment. And as councillors in Cardiff, we have to look at what we could actually do here. The Labour Manifesto for Cardiff states that it will be looking for retrofit of homes for energy efficiency. It also says it will use the replacement LDP to deliver desperately needed low carbon housing. People can access the hubs in their community, and they can ask for help from the Money Advice Service. This has been in place in Cardiff for quite some time, and it has helped many people claim benefits that they hadn't realised that they were entitled to. Personally, I would like to see all the new builds going up in Plastore being energy efficient. They should be built with solar panels. I mean, I'm saying exactly the same as the rest of us. They should be fitted with heat pumps. They should be properly insulated. I don't approve of their methods, but Insulate Britain are flagging up a really important issue. We have to save energy where we can. I would like to see it a condition of planning that any new building is well insulated and well provided for maximum energy efficiency. I've also got lots of bees in my bonnet about having tidal power, etc., but that's a bit beyond the remit of the Cardiff Council.
Okay, the next question moves on to the topic of representation. So not all successful candidates are in the governing party. If you are successful, but your party is not the governing party after this election, how would you ensure that you can make a difference for the residents of Radyr and Morganstown? And I'll ask the Conservative Party to start us on this one, please.
So I think we need to focus on that. History has shown here in this ward, you do not have to be in the ruling party to make a difference at local level. Rod, who's in the audience, has managed to, in the time of being a councillor, secured funding that has ensured that there's been a skate park, library refurbishment, floodlit all-weather pitches at the comp, lift access at the rail station, support for outdoor teaching areas at the primary school, and making sure that the lane and the golf course is a safe walking route. We've made sure that at local level, we have put in place measures to affect the lives of people and make a difference where we can. So it shows that you do not need to have somebody in the ruling party to make a difference. I noted on social media, Labour the other week had a picture at the park and said, this park will be delivered if you vote for Labour. I think that is pork barrel politics. I think it's taking the people for Radyr for a ride. It's a disgrace to do that. I think at local level, we should be focusing on what we can do. And I think that proper representation at council level can do that. It's to be part of committees. It's to raise pertinent questions with policymakers and with office holders on the council. And it's to make sure that we do what we can to highlight the concerns of you, the electorate. It's not good enough to simply turn around and say, I'm not in that party, I cannot make a difference. I think if the people have spoken and that they've raised legitimate concerns, Drover Park would be a prime one. It is one that if the right people are engaged and the right scrutiny is applied, change can happen and it can make a difference for the positive of the area. So I think it's for the birds that this area cannot be represented unless you're in the ruling party. I think history shows that's the case. I think we just got to look at the track record of what's happened here under Rod's time as councillor.
And the Labour Party next, please.
Hi, it's a difficult one for us to answer, really, because we do firmly believe that we will be part of the ruling party of Cardiff. And we don't just do that because of emotive reasons. At the moment, Labour holds 39 of 75 seats. Welsh Labour is relatively popular, so we see no reason why we should see a number fall in that. The Conservatives hold 21 seats, and given their crises in terms of leadership in the United Kingdom party and also the cost of living crises that so many of us are feeling, it's very difficult to see them getting a surge. And of course, at the moment in Cardiff, Plaid Cymru and Green have a total number of no seats. Nevertheless, I'll answer the question. Helen and I, we're active in the community. We listen to our constituents. We will, if we were in opposition, hold regular surgeries, including in Morganstown, rather than just in Radyr. We've been members of the Community Council between us over 20 years. The Community Council tends to operate on an independent basis. Helen and I have a proven track record of working with people on the Community Council with different political viewpoints to ours. We've managed to get a lot of work done in our time on the Community Council, in part because of that. And our success on the Community Council has been proved by the fact that both I and Helen have been vice chair and chair and selected by other people on the Community Council, recognising our worth. We believe that politics is becoming too dogmatic. We've talked to lots of people on the canvassing trail, and we've enjoyed the company of Radyr and Morganstown constituents, both our opponents and our supporters. Some really good conversations. However, I would have to take issue with a remark that was made about a tweet that was made. I think they're reading too much into it. We highlighted in 140 words we were allowed on Twitter that we talked to the leader of Cardiff Council about the park, full stop. And then we made reference to the fact that if we were in the winning party, we would have a seat at the table. Thank you.
And the Plaid Cymru Green Party Alliance, please.
Thanks. So I from Tyrone's response there, I can see that he's quite confident in the Labour Party. I'm not sure that he's got quite an understanding of what's going on across the city and just how unpopular the current Cardiff Council administration is. We do have one councillor, Andrea Gibson in Ely, but we are quite confident of returning a good group to Cardiff Council this year. In terms of representation, we know we're not going to win this election, so we have to work with other parties. But I think what Plaid Cymru and the Green Party do well is, we've got experience of this. The Common Ground Alliance, a lot of people have told us that they like the fact that we're working with the Green Party and we're looking for things that we agree on rather than focusing on the things that we disagree on. We've got a cooperation agreement with Welsh Government to get through a certain amount of policy areas at a Senedd level. But at the same time, I've said on many occasions, I'm happy to work with Conservative colleagues to oppose legislation if I think it's not in the best interests of the community. I think what people want to see is a grown-up type of politics. They want to see people working together, politicians working together, rather than this fight and this negativity. I've been a victim of it over the past couple of days. I've had attacks on social media, threats to my mother's house. My boards have been vandalized on Hir Lisaf. I spent all the day yesterday in a police station giving a statement. And I just think you know, we need to get past this horrendous politics. The candidates here tonight have been absolutely fantastic and so supportive. And I think, you know, we agree on so much. I think, you know, that is what we need to focus on going forward. And, you know, whoever, you know, chooses to vote for us come election time, I will represent every person in this community. I don't care what your politics are. I just want to be there for you.
Next question's on equality. So Radyr Morganstown is a diverse community. How would you ensure that you represent this diversity if elected? And how would you ensure that you are gathering the most diverse range of views to inform your positions? And we'll start with the Labour Party, please.
Those of you who know me well will know that I have a rainbow family, and I love watching my grandchildren play together. They love each other, and I don't think the fact that they look different even occurs to them. There are many types of inequality. When I started my career, I was sent a letter to say I was a chartered engineer, which began, "Dear Sir," and continued, "Helen Margaret." In my first job on my first morning, I was introduced to all the engineers in the team, and then my boss said in a loud voice so that everyone could hear, "If we have any redundancies to make, you will be the first to go. You are a woman. Welcome to the world of work." 50 years on, and he wouldn't have got away with that. There is amazing diversity work going on in Cardiff. I know Professor Mina of Radyr, who founded the Ethnic Minority Welsh Women Achievement Awards, and Vimla Patel, who is heavily involved with the Hindu Council of Wales. Vimla makes a point of reaching out to the communities around her temple. We need understanding, and we need to enjoy the richnesses of their culture without losing the richnesses of our own. And I don't know if you saw, but on Facebook, there were two girls, Sophia and Alice, who last weekend spent an entire afternoon baking brownies so they could sell them to raise money for SARI. SARI is a charity stand against racism and equality. And I think we're all very proud of the effort those young ladies have made. It matters very much to me that we continue towards creating a community here in Radyr and Morganstown where people can feel they belong, whatever their gender, colour, or creed.
Plaid Cymru Green Party Common Ground Alliance, please.
Hi, thank you very much for those kind words, and I agree with everything you say. But there's an inequality very apparent in our society that has nothing to do with colour or creed. It's to do with ability and health. For example, how many of you know that there's a very large community of disabled people living on Haley Sub in a Dannebryn, Leonard Cheshire home? And I was absolutely shocked when I first became disabled that none of them are ever seen in the village centre. Whether there was COVID or not, they just are institutionalized in that home. And, you know, what is it that stops them from actually coming out, attending the Radyr Carnival Festival events and going and having a cup of tea at Chichetti? The problem is that there were barriers to traveling about Radyr if you're disabled. So, you know, they are effectively trapped. And when I became disabled, one of the first things I did was go and visit the people who lived in that home and to make contact with them. This was before COVID. And, you know, we discussed different hobbies that we could help them with, like creating art. And then the pandemic struck and we thought we still need to help these people because the burden on disabled people of the pandemic has been huge. The majority of people who've died of COVID were disabled or had a long-term condition. But, you know, it's swept under the carpet for many people just think, oh, COVID's terrible and it was awful being on lockdown. But imagine being disabled and being on lockdown with all the community services shutting down for 2 years. So we did what we could and we started a project called Connect to Create, where we delivered workshops through Zoom. And it was very, very, very successful and got to know the people who lived in Dunnerburn. And I think I should stop there because I'll go over time. But I'm disabled and I worked really hard to make life better for disabled people like myself.
Thank you. And the Conservative Party.
Well, I think we heard two very good contributions there about issues in the area. We've been canvassing for a long time now, since we selected in November, and that's given us a chance to meet many hundreds of people in the area. And when I've spoken, and actually you touched upon it there, when it comes to the issues on Hale Isaf, speaking to the elderly, the infirm, the disabled, about just how difficult it is to catch a bus sometimes, just on Hale Isaf. You may think, if you're thinking about it, if I'm just looking at a map, you may think that's quite easy, but you have to experience it for yourself, and you see just how hilly it is, just how difficult it is. And sometimes that that doesn't really get appreciated, I think, by the ruling powers. When the question comes to how we represent people, well, we've spoken to everybody. We've knocked on every door in Radyr multiple times. I don't think there's one we haven't. The only ones we haven't gone back to are the ones who said, don't ever come back here again, or they're not going to vote for us. I think 2 people on this panel I've knocked so far, but they were very polite to me. I want to also mention the fact that I think that's really important, so that we do this annually. It's not going to be something we're not going to canvass just at election time. We're committing to an annual canvass, as well as regular updates through leaflets and emails. And we know that the main job of a councillor is the casework. We've spoken to Rod McCurlick, the outgoing councillor, and his words of wisdom will help us should we be elected. We will also be open on social media, so people can find us of any age. And we will be active in the community. I know the Radyr Festival is coming up. I'm sure I'll see some of you there. If you want to harangue me or say something nice, please say hello. And the endorsement on our latest leaflet actually says that, we're open and accessible. And the last thing I just want to say is that we don't want to demean people and just build them into certain groups. We treat everyone as equals. We don't just go back to it. We don't not go back to a house just because we felt a bit uncomfortable there. We're here to represent everybody, and we're not going to, well, we start to mean as we go on. We're going to say hello to everybody. We're going to take on everybody's issues and work for them.
Okay, that moves us on to our final question of the evening, which is on public sector pay. Public sector workers have been essential to the provision of services for many of our elderly and vulnerable citizens during the pandemic. Would you support a fair pay increase for all public servants directly or indirectly employed by the council, and look to insource the maximum possible functions into full council control? And for the final question, I'll ask Plaid Cymru and the Green Party Common Ground Alliance to start us off, please.
Hello, hi. Care is such an important part of my life, because since I'm becoming disabled, I cannot do much for myself. I've had to rely on help, and in the form of an unpaid carer who is my husband. He does everything for me. He helps me get dressed in the morning. He takes me to the toilet. And so I've understood how important it is for vulnerable people to actually have access to care from kind people who are not under time pressure because they have a 0-hour contract, which means that they can only spend 15 minutes to feed someone and to get them up in the morning and take them to the toilet, maybe 2 or 3 times a day. It's absolutely appalling that public sector workers should be treated in this way. Care should be a respected profession, and they should not have 0-hour contracts. They should have permanent jobs, and they should have job security. At the moment, what we have is a situation of terrible precarity, and it's come to bite us on the bum with Brexit, when a lot of people who worked in care have been forced to go home because they can no longer work here. It's a complete disaster, and we need a complete rehaul of the care system, which is why I know Plaid Cymru advocates for a national care service, like the National Health Service, where people will get a proper pay and job security and a long-term future, because care is an incredibly important job and it should be valued just like lots of other public sector roles should be valued. And haven't we come to realize how important these roles are that we thought were menial and unskilled? With the pandemic, we've seen that without them, life just grinds to a halt. So I'm very passionate about this, and I will work very hard to get care workers the conditions and pay that they deserve.
The Conservative Party next, please.
So public sector pay is a very emotive subject. Now, when I saw this question, I've thought long and hard about it. I agree with the comments you made about carers. My gran has dementia. She is completely reliant upon carers and my parents to keep her safe and well. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm not aware of the job that people do. When we talk about public sector pay, I think we also have to consider the financial implications of that. We are talking about rising council tax. The council provides over 800 different services. And so it is considering when you say all workers, I personally would, if we were looking at pay, I would rather focus on those on the lowest earnings on the council payroll rather than those on executive pay. I believe that executive pay is generous enough. So if we're looking at public sector pay, I think priority should be those on the lowest wages. In terms of provision of service, I'm not sure the public are dogmatic about whether service is provided by a contractor or by the council itself. I think realistically, they care about the service itself. They want the service that's done to the highest possible standard, that looks after them, that addresses their concerns. So I don't think we should be getting bogged down into the dogmatic nature of, is it private or public sector? Let's focus on what the service is and let's make sure that it's done at a high standard. Going back to it, I think realistically, in principle, yeah, as a Conservative, we think if you've contributed, if you've done your job, you should be rewarded and remunerated accordingly. But that also is caveated with the thing of, there is the public purse to consider and there's the financial implications. So I hope you can take away from that what we would look at the lowest earnings on the council for priority on any increase in pay rather than executive pay.
And finally, the Labour Party, please.
I guess the short answer is yes and yes. Both Helen and I want to recognise the importance of public sector workers and the work they do, including teachers, other school staff, social workers, carers, bus drivers and refuse disposal operators. During the time of the pandemic, they worked when some of us didn't. And they often worked in dangerous and frightening conditions and obviously kept society and community functioning as best they could. So well done to these guys. So for us to say that they don't deserve that, and I'm guessing all of us here would say, of course, they deserve fair funding and a decent wage. And obviously, it's even more important now because they've suffered a real-term loss over the last 10 years of austerity and also are currently having to face the cost of living crises. Of course, it would be disingenuous of us as council taxpayers to suggest that we could do that without actually paying council tax. So this nonsense from other parties and saying that we want to freeze in council tax, I'm afraid if we want a service, we have to pay for it. Cardiff Council, Labour-led, has proposed a 1.9% rise below the cost of inflation. Personally, I think that that is right and apt, because quite frankly, you get what you pay for. And also as well, the Labour Party in Wales, the governing party of Wales, has awarded an increased grant to local councils, and Cardiff this year has got a grant worth 10.7% more than they've been financed before. The purpose of that grant is to see us out of the COVID crisis, but more importantly, to look after the services that local councils actually deliver. So I think Labour here has really got a massive part to play and is indeed doing that. As far as working inside the council, yes, we would say that. We're socialists, and I think with good HR, good relationships with trade unions, workers will feel happier, deliver the better services that both they want to deliver and we would expect.
Right, thank you very much, everyone. So that, as I said, was our last question this evening. I will shortly invite the candidates to make their closing statements. Before I do that, just because I believe we've had a few people join us online that may have missed the introductions, I'd just like to clarify that that every individual candidate that was on the published statement of persons nominated for the Radyr Morganstown Ward was invited to attend this evening. And this is a non-selective hustings from the point of view of us as the organisers. The Liberal Democrat Party, who have 2 candidates put forward, did not take up our invitation. The Propel Party did, and they were due to send their candidate Steve West, but he was unfortunately unable to attend in person due to illness. So just wanted to repeat that quickly. So moving on to the closing statements. Please, could I ask one of the Plaid Cymru Green Party members to kick us off? You will both get to have a closing statement. I'll ask one from each party to start for 3 minutes, and then I'll circle back around.
Perfect, thank you. Can I just quickly start off by saying thank you to Tom and the team at Radyr Morganstown Association. I think it's been a really good hustings this evening. It's lovely to see a room full of people. Again, it's quite strange actually looking back at so many faces and seeing you all together. And I hope, I'm sure we've got a big audience on the live feed as well. So I hope you've enjoyed it this evening. So for me, I think this election is about trust. We've heard some broadly similar messages from all of the candidates tonight. We agree on an awful lot of things, but for me, it's who do you trust to deliver those things? I've got a huge amount of respect for all the candidates in the room this evening. We've met on the campaign trail. It's been good to have a bit of banter, and we've enjoyed sort of exchanging conversations as we've been going around canvassing. But what I've seen in Westminster over, the past year plus, I really don't trust the Conservative Party currently, and I've heard that a lot on the doorstep. I know it's a broad stroke, but I know a lot of people, even the candidates, have said that there is a bit of distrust there at the moment. I've also got to say it about the Labour administration in Cardiff, in City Hall. I agree, Mark Drakeford's message has been, very positive and, strong, strong and stable. I think that was another party, but we'll use it. He's done well through the pandemic, but this council administration is very, very unpopular. Back in 2012, before the council elections, then Labour promised not to build on the green fields around our villages. But, and having made that promise, they won a majority on the council. By the end of that administration, they brought in the LDP, which is building tens of thousands of houses on those same green fields that they promised not to build on. Back in 2016, when that LDP was passed, they also promised that was going to be it until 2036. They put all the development in there. But 4 years later, we've got a replacement local development plan that's put in thousands and thousands more houses on our green fields without the infrastructure, without the services in place. And I'm really worried that if they do get the majority in a couple of weeks' time, I'm worried what faces our villages in the future. What I've said previously, Plaid Cymru and the Green Party, Common Ground, are going to vote against the replacement local development plan and force the Labour Party and officers of Cardiff Council back to the drawing board with it. I think that's the right thing to do, to give people, an opportunity to have a real say on it. So if you are tired of, the same two-party politics, you want something different, someone else to put your trust in, I'd say, vote for us. We can offer you a change and deliver the change that these villages and this city desperately needs. Thank you.
Come to the Conservative Party next, please.
Well, I want to thank the RMA for my invitation tonight, for everyone who attended both online and in person, as well as the candidates for which I think was a spirited debate and from what I've seen, a good-natured campaign as well. Since being selected in November, I've been knocking on doors several times a week, every week. By the end of this campaign, I will have done probably nearly 200 hours of door knocking, speaking to hundreds of residents. We haven't just turned up a few days or a few weeks ago. We have been out there talking to residents, not just anonymously leafleting, for months, because we wanted to build our campaign around your concerns and because we want to be open, accessible, and engaged with you. We have done this because we want to earn your trust, your confidence, and your vote. While others are focused on national issues because they cannot defend their local record, we have stressed what needs to be done here in Cardiff because that is all we can do. This election will not change what happens nationally, but has the chance to condemn us to another 5 years of a Labour council that's for too long failed Cardiff. I have not given up scores of evenings and weekends to campaign in the cold and the rain for a laugh. Christopher and I have done so because we want to make this whole city better, challenging an agenda that is often far too dogmatic and certainly dysfunctional. And we know our success will mean Radyr Morganstown's success too. Our agenda is clear: hold developers' feet to the fire in Plastewr, organise against further development on the land around the golf club and on the rail station car park, keep council tax low, restore bus services, make the Drovers Way Park a priority for the council, and be strong representatives for the area. Continuing with Rod McCurlick, your outgoing councillor, has succeeded, and we are very fortunate to have his support to succeed him. While Labour may preach to you that they are the better choice, it is that party that's voted through the LDP that gave us Plastewr, and if they get more seats, they can do it again. They raised your council tax by more than inflation for years, only conveniently before an election dropping it below that. They cut the number of buses. Plaid, meanwhile, have no councillors. The Lib Dems couldn't turn up tonight, and Propel has no momentum. I know I cannot avoid the national issue of leadership. I've been honest whenever asked, and even said so on national television. I will not defend the indefensible. I want to be elected to show senior politicians how it is done. I am here standing on my own merits, and I've not been found guilty of doing wrongdoing anywhere. If you decide to vote against Chris and me because of Boris, and not what we stand for locally, then you deny yourself the most energetic, committed, and skilled slate of candidates before you this evening. I believe we have demonstrated that we are qualified. The question for you now is, do you vote out of anger or hope? It would be a great honor to represent this city that I have made my home. I am already fighting for you, and I start as I mean to go on. To me, if I may say so myself, the choice is obvious. Vote Callum and vote Christopher. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
The Labour Party, please.
Okay, I thought Helen was going first there, but she's handed me the mic. I just want to talk a little bit about myself, not because I'm an egotistical person, but just to let you know that I'm one of yours. I've lived in Radyr, as I've already told you, since 2004. My wife and I, Anna, we brought up 5 children. They attended Brynderry, they attended Radyr Comprehensive, they went to the cricket club, they went to Radyr Rangers. I walk the same roads as you, I run the same roads as you, I shop in the same vicinity as you, I drive over the potholes that you drive over. So your issues are my issues too. And one of the things that we've been advocating as one of our unique selling points is that we are 2 local candidates who basically aren't career politicians and want to do the job we can for the people of the community or the 2 communities. I've already referenced the fact that both of us have been on the community council. I myself have been on the community council since 2007. And you know, it's not something that perhaps everyone's aware of the work that it does, but it does a lot of work. And I've been instrumental in supporting a lot of things that have happened. For example, the Good Neighbours scheme, youth projects, the management of this building, and so on and so on and so on. So I've got a proven track record of actually doing some work, unpaid work, volunteer work in the community. And I'm even known to get my hands dirty because I'm one of the Radyr Woods wardens, and I'm responsible on a rota for looking after the litter picking down there. We are standing as Labour candidates. I am standing as a Labour candidate, but I am not a career politician. I'm 58. I'm not going to tell you Helen's age because it wouldn't be appropriate. 21, I think. But we aren't answerable to anyone. We don't want to be cabinet members. We don't want to be leaders of the party in Cardiff. We just want to represent the community. We are people first, we are residents second, and we will be members of the Labour Party third. And we will advocate against the building on green spaces and the station. We will support local services. in whatever shape or form they can be. We will be particularly keen on developing policies for young people, getting back out youth centres, making sure we get a community worker that will go around and look after these young children and youngsters and give them appropriate advice. And if we need to, we will vote against our party. And if we have the whip withdrawn, then so be it. We are totally against the building on green spaces. So I think I need to reiterate that. And lastly, with apologies to the musical Hamilton, I think it's really important the people of Radyr Morganstown actually give the voice to us as a party so we can be in the room where it happens. Because for too long, they've ignored this part of Cardiff, and that's an embarrassment to me as a Labour supporter. But we are going to be relatively independent and fight from within the ruling party. Thank you.
I'll come back to Plaid Cymru, Green Party.
I just want to say thank you, first of all, for this wonderful hustings and this great opportunity for us to have our say. My thanks are especially heartfelt because you've made it possible for a disabled candidate like me to have a say like everyone else. And it's what I've learned over the canvassing that we've done, Mike and I, over the last couple of months, is that I really enjoy meeting people who live in Radyr. I myself has been resident in Radyr since 2006 and brought up my family here, our 2 young children. So we are very, very local, and the issues that affect people in our village have affected us so badly. In particular, the loss of our park at Drovers Way. When my children were growing up, they did everything at that park. It's basically at the bottom of our drive. They learned to walk, they learned to climb, they learned to cycle. And then in 2018, I think the park was closed off, and it's been nearly 5 years now. And my son, who's 12 this year, hasn't been able to play in a park since the age of 7.5. And, you know, it's so damaging to child development for them to not have access to play. And the government, the Labour government, knows that because they've legislated to make play a basic human right. And yet they've gone and done this. I really take issue with some of the comments that have been posted on Twitter by the Labour candidates in this area, which is that we have a better chance of getting the park renovated if we elect Labour because they have a good relationship with the council and County Hall. I think that's really unfair. I think all children deserve access to play, regardless of how their parents vote. So, you know, I found that very crass, and it was pork barrel politics. And, you know, I don't know how they thought that they could post that without it being like a veiled threat to people to vote Labour. Anyway, I'm never sought out to be a career politician, but I'm a mother and I'm a scientist, and I work with data, and the data on which the LDP was passed by the Labour Council is flawed because the population growth for Cardiff is 80% less than what they predicted. So, you know, why don't we pause the LDP right now, because the predictions were wrong, and concentrate on building infrastructure like schools, shops, and surgeries so that communities can be supported, existing communities and new communities. And that's all I say, and that's what I stand for. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. We'll come back to the Conservative Party, please.
I'll reiterate what pretty much everyone on the panel said. Thank you very much for the platform you've afforded us this evening. It's much appreciated. I think events like this are crucial to our democratic process. I'd like to say now I'm saddened to see that someone has vandalised the sign that was put up for the Plaid Cymru and Common Ground campaign. In terms of why I want to be your councillor, I thought about this for a while, and I'm not a career politician. I have no aspirations higher than this. This is the zenith for me. Like I'm not looking to go to Westminster or Cardiff Bay. I care about this community. I've spent a lot of time in the community. I might not be from the community, but you have to find somewhere that you call home. And my siblings and I came to Cardiff and we've created our own enclave here in Cardiff. I have one sister just over the river. I have one sister down in the city centre and one in Roath. We've called Cardiff our home, and I believe that where you live, you should be active within the community. You should seek to help that community, and you should be active within it. So I also thought about what personal characteristics I could bring to this role. And as I said, I'm not a career politician. I work outside of politics. I work in financial services and compliance, and on a day-to-day basis, I apply scrutiny to decisions. I look at the evidence and then I act accordingly. And so I think that is suited to the role of a councillor. As I said, there are 800 different services provided by Cardiff Council. To scrutinise that, you need to be able to look at stuff in a forensic level, that you dig into the data, that you look at the service and you understand what's going on beneath the service. I could easily go on about services within the city, and I said at the start I was saddened. And the main thing that drove me to run for council was that when the first lockdown was going on, they were talking about Sir Thomas Picton being a worthy statue for City Hall. There'd been a report about children's services in the city. And out of 35 criteria, the council has scored 0. Labour Council failing young children in the city, vulnerable children. And I sat there in my office and I thought that something has gone seriously wrong, that they are neglecting children and talking up and playing in the press about a statue. I thought priorities were completely wrong. So I will bring passion. As you can tell, I'm a quite passionate individual. Some would say hot-headed on occasion, but I will bring passion and forensic scrutiny to what is going on at the council. And I believe that will add value to this community, improve services, focus on the basics like the potholes that you mentioned, focus on school places, the fact that there's 150 children applied for places and didn't get a place this year. I want to focus on that, to address those and try and improve the service. And at the end of 5 years, when we talk about trust, I will happily say at the end of 5 years, if I have not delivered, I would not seek re-election. I'm not in this for the pay.
And the Labour Party, please.
Thank you. Politics is a very odd world. You give hours of unpaid service, and then the curtains come down and you're yesterday's man. But I do want to say now in front of everybody just how much Tyrone and I have appreciated the hard work that we know Councillor Rod McCurloch has put in to this community. I can tell him now that we've appreciated you, Rod. We've appreciated the support you've given in the Community Council, and we can tell you from feedback from the doorstep that you are very highly regarded right through the community. So we'd like to thank you. For me, I didn't start by telling you about my background in any shape or form, but I was actually born and brought up in a very beautiful part of Mid Wales by the River Wye. I'm a country girl through and through. I've gone to sleep listening to the cry of sheep. I've even stooked wheat sheaves, that dates me, and I've helped bring in the hay. Green spaces really matter to me. Like Tyrone, I live in Radyr. We are very lucky to live here, and it is you, all the people of Radyr and Morganstown, who make it such a wonderful place to live. It has been an honour to serve you on the Community Council, albeit sometimes a very, very cold honour while waiting for the Christmas trees to arrive in early cold December mornings. My favourite experience on the Community Council was acting as Santa's elf and his social media representative during the winter lockdown of 2020. The joy on the children's faces as Santa went past was so uplifting. Tyrone and I will do our best to represent Radyr and Morganstown well. We too have had enough of the constant change in our world and in our ward from the developers. We all know we need time to sort out the existing problems, and we all know that we must keep the few green spaces we have left. We have enjoyed listening to many of the comments the other candidates have made. Some of them I haven't thought of before, and very valid ones, and I'm really grateful everybody's been here tonight. Please give Tyrone and I the opportunity to represent our area our community, our patch. We want to see the bus services improved. We want to see the pavements improved. And oh, how we want the playground in Cross Park Radyr put right. I'd love to be able to take my grandchildren there. And we desperately want to protect what is left of our green spaces. We've talked about Goitrafar. We've also got the issue of Cwm Farm. There are many things to worry about in this area and that need to be protected. Can I just thank you all for coming tonight and listening in from your homes? And thank you to the RMA for organising this hustings. Congratulations to you all and a very happy festival.
Right, well, thank you very much to all the candidates. Yeah, I would like to formally express my thanks, particularly for the positive manner in which you've all engaged in this evening's conversation. I would also put on record that I was personally disgusted to see the defacing of the signage, and hopefully an event like tonight goes to show that that really is not representative of the majority of residents in Radyr and Morganstown who would far prefer to engage in a healthy conversation. So thank you. I'm heartened by the turnout, both in person and online. It's very encouraging. Thank you to all those who also engaged with us ahead of the hustings by submitting their questions as well. So I hope everyone has enjoyed this evening and perhaps come away a little clearer as to how they might cast their vote next Thursday, the 5th of May. And on that note, good evening, everyone.